So why don't we just start out by talking about, well, I think to highlight kind of the topics that we are planning on covering tonight. So talking
Mhm.
about expectations, routines and transitions,
Mhm.
and just also as a family, kind of how we're able, or how families are able to enjoy each other when setting expectations, when there are routines, and when there's just the pressure kind of life, right? And so I don't know if it makes sense. I think like, kind of posing that question for you first, and then I obviously can chime in as we move forward. But like, why, what are expectations? We'll start
Mhm.
there, I guess. Kind of what are expectations ultimately?
Yeah, so I mean, I think so I know expectations are really like explicit directions on how to behave, and we can be really non-specific, right? Like be a good listener, do what I'm telling you, just go clean your room, or we could be very specific, right? Like put your clothes in the laundry basket, follow instructions. And I just find with you know, children of all ages, the clearer and more concrete the expectations, the more likely they are going to be followed, right? I mean, especially little kids, like for the most part, little kids want to please people. They want to be seen in a good light. I think you have children with significant behavioral challenges, um, and oftentimes their families, they kind of morph into this relationship where the kid's kind of expected to have problems and the parents are expected to be angry or yelling, or they're never going to listen, so why make them listen, or why set an expectation? Um but clear directions on what you want to have happen, I think, is a skill that has to be learned, but it can be highly effective at avoiding problem behavior, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
what about for you? What do you see as you had mentioned something really interesting, earlier about how we can have happy family lives with expectations. I'm curious about unpacking that with you.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So I think my idea around expectations is much like yours. We're like asking, we're setting something up, and we are anticipating the completion of whether it be a task, a behavior, an activity, something, right? And that all of us, I think, within a family system, as individuals as well, right, have
Mhm.
expectations in our lives for the way that we believe things will go, or the way that we hope that things will go. And so as far as kind of the expectations within families, I think it's like you mentioned, really important to be clear, not just individually what our expectations are, but trying to communicate as a family. Let's say we're going to the zoo, right? Having an idea of like, well, what would you like to get out of this trip
Mhm.
to the zoo, Mike? What would you like to get out of this trip to the zoo, Johnny? And so that we're all clear before we go on this big expedition,
Mhm.
where there really is opportunity potentially to be let down or to have increased tension because there wasn't a whole lot of communication beforehand about what we envisioned this looking like. Granted, things still may not go to like according to plan or meet everybody's expectations, but at least we've sort of set out an idea of what we'd like to see happen, right? And what we would like to yeah, how we would envision that occurring for us as a family. And I think when we're clear in that communication, the likelihood of those experiences being more positive increases for sure.
I would totally agree with that. I think a lot of misbehavior is simply children not knowing what's expected of them. And so often I will, when if I'm being vague, or if other people I'm working with are being vague, I'll often ask the person, well, if I saw you being a good listener, what would I see? Or if I saw you following the rules in the supermarket, what would I see you doing? So that even my 6-year old can very clearly state the expectations to me in that way, um, so that we're kind of all on the same page, and not dealing with some vague term of like, just do what your mother tells you, or just listen, be a good listener, or do a good job. Like, well, what would I see if I saw you doing a good job? Oh, I would be walking. I would be using an inside voice. I would be listening to you. Great. Those are what I want you to be doing. And then when you're seeing them do it, right, praise them.
Hmm.
Like it's silly almost. Like my wife says, aren't you embarrassed? Because I'll walk through the store, just, you're doing a great job, but oh, I really appreciate how you're walking. Oh, I love how you're using a quiet voice. That's great. Oh, thanks for putting. And I was like, no, but I'm having a wonderful experience with them right now. I don't really care what the stranger at the other end of the aisle thinks of me
Hmm.
right now, because it's not about them. It's about me and my children having a positive experience out in the community or at home or whatever it is. Same thing can be
Yeah.
for um, things that we do at home,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. Yeah.
So like when thinking about like home life, how do you set expectations?
Right. I think, for me, I think my approach in my life with my kids, as well as in working with families, is again, communication around what the expectations are. So if the
Mhm.
expectations are, you have to, I need you to clean up the clothes that are on your floor. I need you to pick up 5 articles of clothing, right? Again, being very specific in the communication of what that expectation looks like. And also really considering, obviously, is it an age appropriate expectation, right? That I'm asking my kids. If I'm like, hey, pick up 100 articles of clothing, or like you mentioned before, if there's a vague quality to just clean your room, a lot of times kids get incredibly overwhelmed with those tasks when you're like, just go clean your room. Oftentimes they have no idea where to start in those kinds of tasks. So I think again, the communication, I think we can also be really clear in not just communicating it verbally, but creating visual reminders that can be really super helpful for kids because they also want some sense of autonomy in these experiences of tasks and things that they have to do. So the more that we're able to like give them that opportunity, it allows them to have autonomy, but it also takes some of that responsibility off us as parents to feel like we're constantly having to remind them to do things. And so one of the things I really love is like, I've created posters with my kids and posted the morning and nighttime routine when they were like pre ability to read. I would draw little pictures next to
Mhm.
what the expectations were, so that again, it's something that they can still hopefully understand and know what the symbol means.
Yep.
Obviously, as they've gotten older, kind of posting those things up that now they can read, just having a sense of sort of, and they're able, like the nice thing also is it incorporates or can incorporate the opportunity for choice as well, right? So now that they're a little bit older, they're 8, I can post things and say, okay, these are the things we need to get done, or like, here are the very specific things that I need you to do. You can do them like sometimes do them in whatever order works for you guys, and allowing them to have some choice in sort of what that looks like for them.
Absolutely. I mean, right, we all want autonomy, we all want choices. And then they also get to, and then, like you said, like they feel a sense of accomplishment, right? Because they're able to be a bit more independent. And us as parents, we don't have to nag them,
Hmm.
right? It doesn't have to be, it's not my job. That's why I love visual schedules. I'll do that for, and like setting routines, right? Like we have a bunch of routine, like we have a bunch of visual schedules for routines where it's like, all right, oh, you're coming home from school, go check your schedule. What do you need to do next? And it's the same order every time. You got to unpack your bag, you got to take your homework folder out, you got to put your, give the papers to put the papers on the table, do your homework. And it's just the same routine over and over. And the goal being eventually we can get rid of that visual reminder and now they can just do the routine
Hmm.
themselves. you
Right. Exactly.
but it does, it allows for consistency, and it also allows me, I don't have to waste brain energy on remembering the steps of your routine. That's your responsibility, and again, being age appropriate, right?
Right.
The
Exactly.
expectations I have for my 2-year-old are going to be, I am going to be standing there verbally prompting each individual step of, say, cleaning up the toys, whereas my
Hmm.
6-year-old, I can say, put your trains away, put your blocks away, and get ready for bed. And I can or even get ready for bed might need to be broken up into brush your teeth, go to the bathroom, and put your pajamas on.
Hmm.
um, but I can give them I can give him a visual and he can go off and do it.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Whereas for younger kids, toddler, pre-verbal, it's really one step directions,
Right, exactly.
which is developmentally appropriate.
Hmm.
Right? It's developmentally
Yeah,
appropriate for a 6-year-old to be able to follow multi-step directions, perhaps if they're written down, whereas a toddler really is one step,
right.
at a time.
Exactly. And I think taking into account also, right, the personality of our kid. I think like, yes, developmentally, we know like a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old much different, but if we know our 6-year-old struggles, right, with multi-step directions, like
Right.
again, just
Yep.
adapting what we're doing for what
Yep.
we know our kid can tolerate and handle again.
Absolutely. Yeah, just because they're not able to do something doesn't mean you shouldn't expect them to do it. You just might need to give them the scaffolding and the supports to be able to do it successfully.
Exactly.
And I'll even involve him in the what do you need to remember this?
Hmm.
Right? What would pictures help? Oh yeah, pictures. And he likes to draw his own pictures. So we make the list, he draws his pictures, and it works. I don't know what those pictures are, but he knows what they are and they work for him. And I'm like,
As long,
what?
yeah,
Take ownership of it, buddy. That's awesome,
definitely.
you know?
As long as they work for him and that's it, right?
That's
Like,
right.
and I think that's
Yes.
it too. It's like helping to teach them to figure out a
Right.
system also
Right.
that works for them. Yeah, if you know what that symbol means, more power to you.
Yeah. Yep. But isn't that true for us? Like
Right,
if you look at my calendar, that might be really overwhelming and confusing to you, but it works for me,
right.
because I have my tasks, I have my to-do lists on there. Like I schedule time for things that I know, like I schedule times to do my to-do list
Hmm.
because I know if I don't, I'm not going to do it. Right.
Right.
And people are like, how, like, that would make me anxious. There's so many things in your calendar. No, it actually makes me calmer because I never have to remember
Hmm.
anything. It's all in
Yeah.
my calendar
Yeah.
you know it's like what was that movie, the Anchorman, right? Like if you put something on the teleprompter, he's going to say it.
Right.
If I put something on my calendar, I'm going to do it, right? I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
I don't have to
I
think.
like that idea. Also, the idea of, okay, if we get through routine, right, and we have to kind of do the hard stuff before we can do the easy
Oh
stuff or the
gosh,
fun
yes,
stuff, right?
yes,
And so the importance of like of being able to kind of scaffold it that way. Okay, we have to brush our teeth and take a shower and whatever those things that are harder that we need them to do, but then
hmm,
we can sit down and watch a movie together as a family, or we can
right,
read a book together, right? So it's just this
right.
sort of build up to, okay, I can get through the hard so that we can do the easy fun
Yes,
stuff.
yes, absolutely, right. So it's like first then statements,
Hmm.
like, and so yeah, so setting that up as, yeah, that is the language we use in our house, right? The hard versus the easy. And there really is, it's because like things that are hard, boring, like we don't want to do, like I would much rather play video games than clean my room. So we
Hmm.
always do the hard before the easy.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the easy, the outcome is going to be the reward, but it can be part of our schedule,
Hmm.
right?
Right. Yeah.
um and so, like, one thing that I used to do with my kids when we had routines that I knew they struggled with, like my son really liked he didn't like to get out of the bath, but he really enjoyed brushing his teeth. So I would always have him brush his teeth after getting out of the bath because that transition was hard. It was a
Hmm.
fight every night of
Yeah.
like, all right, now we gotta end this fun activity, right? And it's like, no, my world's coming to an end. It's like, no, no, no. We're gonna end this fun activity, but we're gonna have another fun activity. So the
Mm-hmm.
hard getting out of the tub before the easy fun, you get to brush your teeth, right?
Right.
And maybe your child hates to brush their teeth, but
Right.
loves to take. So I might reverse that, you know.
Exactly.
But then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, then be creative with what do they have to look forward to, right?
Exactly.
Maybe they
Yeah.
need some special pajamas.
Hmm.
They
Yes.
get out of the bath and they can put those special pajamas on.
Yeah.
um Maybe it is they have dessert after the bath, right? I mean, you can
Right.
move your schedule around so that, or move the bath time so that you can have them transition to something fun, after something that they necessarily don't want to do.
Right.
You can make your
Exactly.
schedules like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think I love also, I mean, one of the things that I found that can be helpful is that part, but also again, including that in the visual routine, right? So
Yep.
like, okay, we got to do all these things and then make like, on the visual schedule, like either have them draw it, have it be something kind of exciting and celebrating. And so it just again highlights that excitement for them and the playfulness around the process, you know.
And I think too, I think, you know, with younger kids, it's really when we are setting expectations, it's about, you know, I do want to discuss the reason why, the function, right, of the expectation, right? So, you know, explaining like crayons are for drawing on paper, not for drawing on the walls, right?
Hmm.
We put our, you know, the toy bin is for us to keep our toys so we don't lose them. Um, Whereas older kids, we might have a conversation about why we're setting the expectation, right?
Hmm.
So it may be more of a consideration, like we are going to be walking in the store and using our inside voices because we don't want to disrupt other people who are shopping.
Right.
We want to use kind words to your sibling because you want them to use kind words. You want them to treat you kindly. You have to show them how to be kind as well.
Yeah.
Um, and so kind of like, again, teaching them the why behind things tends to be, it helps them kind of generalize to other situations as well, perhaps with their friends or with other family members. Like they can understand why I'm not just doing it because I'm being told to. There's an
Hmm.
actual reason behind it. And then, you know, as they get older, you know, the conversation as to like really becomes a values conversation, right? Like, well, I don't care about other people in the store. Okay, well, how would you feel if other people were being loud or finding examples of times where other people were loud and you didn't like it?
Hmm.
Right. And so
Yeah.
we didn't want them to be loud, but now we're kind of on the flip side of that. Now you're the loud one. Um, right. It's like the beginning blocks of empathy.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I love the way you put that. I mean, just that ability, like to help them step into, yeah, thinking about what other people might be feeling based on their actions or interactions or behaviors.
Mhm.
That's one of like, as far as just, yeah, getting them to kind of think and consider those kinds of things, especially like you said, when we are setting an expectation, it's not like just do this because I said so. What is the reasoning behind it? Because we all want, even as adults, right, want some semblance of a reason why we're doing what we're doing, right? If we're given
Mhm.
a task at work, we want to have a sense of like, what is going to be the outcome or the reason that I have to implement, right, this project or plan instead of just mindlessly kind of following instruction. I mean, sometimes there is a time and place for that, I guess, in work, but
Yep.
no, you know, wanting to have understanding. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and it made me think too. You know, I should have mentioned it earlier, but like when setting, we've talked a lot about how to set expectations, like telling, you know, being very explicit with our routines and our visuals. And you know, I personally like the saying, show what would I see if I saw you when doing this, if it's a vague thing. But I would also say as an adult, like avoid telling them not what to do, right?
Hmm.
Like I really try to avoid saying don't run or don't yell. And the reason is like I'm not really setting an expectation. I'm simply telling them one of the ways they can get in trouble. Because
Hmm.
when I tell you don't yell, I'm not telling you what to do. Right? When I tell you don't hit your brother, well, I'm really not telling you not to kick your brother or bite your brother, right?
Right.
Um, so you know, when and I do hear this a lot, like what am I expecting of you? You know, don't run in the hallway, don't scream. And it's like, okay, but what you know what not to do, but do you know what to do? And often they may not because they might come up with their own ideas. Um, so, and then also too, with some kids, you say don't do something, well, you're kind of planting the seed of what to do.
That's true.
I find that with my 2-year-old very often. I'll say, and I find myself, you know, I'm a human. I make mistakes on a regular basis. You know, don't bite, and all of a sudden he's coming at me like I'm gonna bite Dada. You know,
Right.
and I'm like, oh, you know, I should have said like, you know, although he might not understand, like keep your body to yourself.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I might say like, oh, give Dada a high five, like you know, something more positive, telling him what to do to get my attention as opposed to the problem behavior.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
And that's
for
something
sure.
else that people have to be conscious of and have to practice at, you know, not saying not,
Right. Yeah.
right? um but instead like show me what it would look like, tell me what it would look like, you know,
Exactly.
even for myself, when I see my kids behaving well at home, what do I see? Right,
Hmm.
I see them using their manners, I see them, you know, cleaning up their toys, I see them walking in the store, And so that's what I tell them.
Hmm. Exactly. And going back to your point, I think that you made before is that idea of like praising, right? When we see it, the very specific
Yes.
praise of like, I really appreciated how you cared for your sister and gave her, that toy, or help pick up, her room, or whatever the case is, that there's real specific examples of kind of how that looks. General praise is also good, but
Mhm.
I think the more we can be specific to the behavior that we're looking at, it really helps.
Well, I know I appreciate behavior. I appreciate behavior specific praise.
Hmm.
Like if my boss came, oh, you're doing a good job. Like, okay, great. But if she came and said, I really appreciate how you ran that meeting and how you handled this kid and how you came up, like, okay, I know exactly what you're looking for in terms of
Right.
my performance. There's no question of like, well, what did I do that was because I didn't do everything great, you
Hmm.
know.
Right.
But there's definitely some aspects of what I did that are great. At least that way they know exactly what it is that they're looking for. And if they want that praise again, they can do that exact thing.
Exactly.
I think too, in terms of being clear and concise, having, like visual schedules, but also timers can be helpful
Hmm.
too.
Yes. Yeah, I'm
Um,
a huge fan of timers, because I
yes.
think that also helps to remove, again, that reliance on us as parents. We can
Mhm.
say, okay, like, you have 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes. I'm going to set a timer to do whatever, like, let's say it's that they were reading their book and we know the next thing they have to move into is bedtime routine. Okay, you have 10
Yep.
minutes, setting a
Yep.
timer. Once that timer's done, we move on to the next thing, because like, yes, could we remind them of time ourselves? Absolutely. But then that just increases that tension in our relationship.
Yep.
And
Yep.
granted, even with the timer, sometimes we still may need those reminders, right? There's a few different kinds of timers that I really love using, which there's one that is a visual timer that you can actually set, that not only times the time and lets them know how much time is left, but if they're pretty young, again, the concept of time is just so abstract to them.
Yep.
And so what'll happen is, as it counts down, green, they're still in the good time zone. Yellow, they know that there's time, like, got to start wrapping up what we're doing. And red means, okay, that's the end of whatever that, again, that activity is that they're doing in that moment.
Mhm.
Um, Also love just basic like kitchen timers; those are helpful. And then also sand timers. They actually have different um, incremental time sand timers that you can buy: 5 minutes, 2 minute, 3 minute. Again, if it's a helpful visual, right?
Yep.
Why not
Yep.
for
Absolutely.
kids?
And I think too, again, it's very concrete.
Hmm.
And like you said, like it avoids some of the conflict because now it's not the timer telling them to it's not me telling them to stop, it's the timer telling them to
Exactly.
stop. And I
Right.
can work choice into it. How much time do you think you would like, right? I think
Hmm.
you know uh, any time that you can give choice in the matter. How much time would you like to read? All right, some
Hmm.
things there's no discussion, there's no choice, right? Some things it's bedtime is at 7:30, so there's a hard deadline. But
Exactly.
all right, how much time do you want to play? I want to play for 30 minutes. All right, well, that's a lot of time. Maybe we could start with, do you think we could start with 5 minutes? And there's some
Hmm.
room for negotiation.
Right.
Um, but once you can agree on a time and set it, then it's kind of that, then it's no longer you enforcing it, it's the timer that's
Exactly.
enforcing, you
Yes.
know? And
Yeah.
kids may be disappointed, right? I know I'm disappointed in choices that others make for me or choices I have to make. But I think it's important too that we empathize with kids in
Hmm.
those moments, right? I know that it's hard to stop having fun, but we have to get up early tomorrow for school. And I know, and you're going to be really tired if we keep, if we go to bed late. No, I won't. You will. I'm going to be tired if I go to bed late.
Right.
So I understand it's really hard to stop doing something that we have fun with, and I really
Hmm.
enjoy this. Maybe we can plan on doing it tomorrow.
Exactly.
Finding a time to do it.
That idea of acknowledgement and validation of feelings can
Yeah.
go such a long way as far as diffuse, like getting out ahead of situations that may need diffusing, right? It really can be very helpful in that if we're able to align with where that child's feelings are in a way that we're actually able to step into that as a parent. Obviously, if we're already dysregulated and already reactive and coming from that place, it's not going to likely work as well. But it really can. If we can enter into that, can really help things kind of move forward in a way that we all kind of both the child and the parent kind of need
Absolutely.
it too, you know?
Absolutely. Well, and I try to think of it, I try to think of it from both perspectives, right? Like from the perspective of parent, like I have so much going on. You have to follow your routine. Like we have to go to bed. Like there's just really like get over it, kind of, right? And I
Hmm.
understand that. But from
Hmm.
the perspective of the child, it's like, you know, they don't understand the concepts of tomorrow as well, right?
No.
Like delaying immediate gratification is kind of the name of the game for a kid. So we're kind of teaching them how to delay gratification or teaching them how to be responsible. And I mean, I don't know about you, but like I don't remember people explicitly teaching me like empathy skills or responsibility as a child, you know, but
Mm-mm.
as a parent or as a therapist, like when I'm working with someone, like I'm really having to think deeply about how do I set the foundation to teach these things?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
oftentimes it comes back to expectations, right?
Yeah.
They learn, kids are learning through our modeling. And so
Right.
if they're not following our expectations, and if we ourselves are not following the expectations or modeling good, you know, bedtime routines or behavior in the stores or things like that, um, then why should we expect our child to as well? So
Exactly.
I think that I can see it from both sides, but simply just empathizing with them doesn't mean that we're agreeing with them.
That's a good point.
I,
Absolutely.
I think people see it as that, like being, it's like, oh, well, if I'm empathizing, that means I'm telling them that they're right. It's like, no, no,
Hmm.
no. Like you have to go to bed. And I know that you're disappointed. And I'm sorry that you feel this way.
Right.
We all need to get a good night's sleep. We need you, everyone, to be rested for tomorrow. We've got school, we've got work, we've got whatever. Um, and I know it can be hard, but this is just something that we have to do.
Yeah.
And more times than not, just what are you doing? You're not changing the expectation in any way, but you are demonstrating that your child is heard.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I think that's one of the things I always try to think of. And again, I'm human. It doesn't
Yep.
always enter into my equation. But to think about what is this, the perception or perspective of the child like in this moment when I'm asking them to do this thing or telling them that it's time for bed or whatever it is, whatever those experiences are, trying to
Mhm,
step into that to be like, wow, like what is this like for them? Right. And
mhm,
how as an adult and as a parent can I potentially shift maybe what I'm doing to better accommodate kind of like how they are interpreting this
mhm.
information.
Like, why is it so important that children, their feelings are validated?
Well, because I think it gives them, you know, a sense of an individuality in that, like, I'm a person, right? I'm a person in my own right. My
Mhm,
thoughts and feelings are acceptable in this
mhm,
world, no matter what they may be, no matter what the level of those emotions might be, right? Even if there's like a lot of acting out or a lot of aggression, like your 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 feelings are welcome here.
mhm,
I think also part of that to me comes from a place of in childhood so important to set that stage because then I think as you get older and haven't learned those skills as an adult, it becomes much harder to
mm,
try and
mhm,
learn those skills, right? Trying to
mhm,
backtrack all of that of like, how do I have emotional awareness? What do I do with coping skill? Like, what do I do when I'm dysregulated? And if we don't teach that early and help to support that early on, we're really doing like, it makes it that much harder
yeah,
ultimately. You know, so aside
absolutely.
from kids, like being their own autonomous selves and deserving like, rights in this world, it also helps for future, like their future generation as adults to like just have more empathy, more understanding for themselves and for other people.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, I feel like I want like I want validating them lets them know that I care about them, even
Hmm.
if I'm disappointing them and making them upset. Doesn't mean that I
Hmm.
don't make them upset. I mean, my son,
Right.
he will cry with me. I don't want to say every day, but it's a couple times a week because I'm not he's not able to do what he wants to do. He has
Hmm.
to he has to do something that he feels is unfair or and I just recognize him as he's just an emotional being. Probably more so than the average child. Uh and it doesn't change the expectation, but I do want to maintain that relationship. I
Right.
do not want him to feel like, dad's really hard on me, or he doesn't care about me. Like, I do care about you, and
Hmm.
I do recognize that you're feeling upset, and I do recognize that it's hard. But here's why we need to do this, and we're gonna have to do it. So let's like when I validate him, it does kind of make it a bit easier, an easier pill for him to
Yeah.
swallow, I think.
And it strikes me as also, and I agree with what you're saying, it's like this idea of joining with, right? Joining with
Yeah.
and trying to align with each other to be like, yes, we're going through kind of this hard challenge of transition or whatever it is that we're asking to like kind of do next. If it's bedtime, right? Like, let's
Yeah.
join together in this
Mhm.
process. And you're right. Yeah, we're going to make our kids upset. And I think the important part is too, at least one of the things that struck me as you were talking as well, is that, obviously as parents, we aren't perfect, right? And sometimes we do enter into situations where we are dysregulated also. And so I think one of the biggest things or takeaways for that as far as like being able to preserve that relationship is that we own up to
Mhm.
the our misgivings afterwards, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm sorry that I yelled, or I'm sorry that I got frustrated. I was feeling really grumpy or was not handling the situation well, and
Mhm.
here's why. And I apologize for
Yep.
that, right? Like being able to own up to it, I
Yep.
think is so important.
It's very powerful to apologize, to be able to apologize to your kids when you make a mistake, because it's gonna
Exactly.
happen. You
Right.
know, I do it all the time. I'm a work in progress, as I like to
Yes.
say, and
Same.
I make mistakes. Sometimes I yell. Sometimes I'm unfair. Sometimes I'm not taking their feelings into account. Sometimes I am being hard.
Mhm.
And like that's life. Like,
Yep. Yeah. And sometimes I'm not focused, right? Like I
Yeah,
think one of the
yeah,
one of the points we had made when we talked last time was just that idea of like, if we're expecting their focus on what it is that we're saying or we're asking of
yep,
them, the
yep,
recognition for me that I'm not always paid. Like they want to tell me about Minecraft for the thousandth time, and sometimes I'm not there, right?
right,
But the acknowledgement of that, and like you said, work in progress. The
yep,
the acknowledgement that like, okay, I'm going to make an effort as a parent to be more present, right, in
absolutely.
whatever that means for me,
Absolutely.
for sure.
And then I think as they, just to kind of like wrap it up a little bit, like
Mhm,
when they are able to complete the routine or the expectation, perhaps it's not perfect, right? Perhaps they needed reminders and they made mistakes, but I'm gonna praise them, right? I'm really proud of you for trying so hard, or I'm really proud of you. You did most of these things on your own, right? I'm really I'm really happy to see that you took responsibility cleaning out your bag, or that I'm really proud that you were able to do your nighttime routine almost on your own, right? Oh, I forgot. I don't say, oh, you only forgot one thing. No, you did four
mhm,
things on your own, right? So I want
right,
to focus on the positive. Um,
exactly.
Practice makes progress kind of thing.
Yeah,
Or if I'm in the store and I know it's really hard, right? So routines that are kind of established, or expectations that are kind of established, I may praise at the end. But if there's a lot of outside pressure and stimulation, or like we're at the store and I know, and they're not, my kids are walking, right? See, I almost did it there. They're not doing this. No, no, they are. They're walking. They're using inside voices. I'm going to be praising
mhm,
very often.
yeah,
Um, and so I might fade that out a lot more slowly, right? So I might keep that intense level of praise a lot longer in an outside setting, or in a setting that's a lot more challenging than I would like with an easy routine that's done in the calmness of my home.
mhm,
But I
exactly.
think too, I think rewarding, right? Rewarding, reinforcing with praise, being
Mhm,
proud, looking them in the eye, getting at their level is so much more powerful than any sort of tangible reinforcer, right? So
mhm,
people tend to think of rewards as money or ice cream or candy, and that's just one kind of reward. Um, but I think that praise, especially from caregivers, where the kids are looking for that attention from them, can go a really, really long way. Not only in terms of reinforcing the behavior, but in terms of strengthening the relationship as well.
absolutely. I think, also to wrap it up to the point that you made in the beginning, is that kids want to please us. I mean, as
Oh
much
yeah.
as we want to believe that, like, they don't, they do. They want to
Yep.
demonstrate to us that they can do a good job. It's just they need clear, concise ideas of what those expectations are, and emotional and support and validation. I mean, that's, It's just
Absolutely.
so important. Yeah.
So what did we say? So we said setting clear expectations is about being explicit, telling them what you want to see,
Hmm.
of using communication style that's age appropriate, whether it's written verbally or with pictures, setting routines, right? Avoiding saying not doing something, right? In terms of like, but being positive and being specific as to what you want to see. And when you do see progress, recognizing it,
Hmm. Right.
right?
Exactly.
Offering choices or giving some sense of control of what those expectations are when it's appropriate,
Hmm.
right? Because
Right.
I would say there's some that are non-negotiable. Bedtime is
Yep.
non-negotiable, but perhaps the time that we do dinner or the time that we do our homework, it is negotiable, perhaps,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
It's going to depend on the household. Um, and then when you see them do it, even if it's not perfect and it's not exactly what you want, but you see them trying, you want to
Hmm.
be specific in praising that. Right.
Exactly.
I know this
Yeah.
was really hard for you today, but I saw that you tried really hard, and I'm really proud that you tried so hard.
Exactly.
Even just
Yeah.
praising the effort as opposed to the outcome, I
Hmm.
think is really valuable as well.
It can go a long way for sure. I mean, I feel like it also highlights that idea of like instead of focusing on yeah, like achievement, it's like the process, not
Mhm.
just like the end result,
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
great.